What's going on, Toure? How you doing?
Man, I'm great, bro. Excited for another day to be above water. That's for sure. Above ground, I should say.
That's something to be excited about, or were you excited about something else?
Man, I'm always excited about helping people, especially when you
Understood.
take it, especially
Understood.
when you're giving people something so small is giving people so much of their time back. They don't even know what to do with it. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. You say something so small. I want to talk about that because we had a conversation yesterday where we were just talking about, and that's where kind of the transition happens, where it comes from what we do to the actual result. And you said something small like giving somebody, I know in your bio it says 8 hours, which is a whole nother conversation, but giving somebody just 3 hours back. And I wanted to make sure we're on the same page. But you're talking about giving somebody 3 hours back in a work week or in
Yeah, no,
okay.
like 3 hours in a work week back. I mean, I feel like, you may not be able to build a case study behind it, but it is that compound interest. And yet this person was a consultant who just found themselves losing confidence and being able to kind of expand or grow. And he thought the problem was something bigger. And maybe the problem still is, but he couldn't see the forest before the trees because of all the things that he was bogged down with. And we were able to just implement a decision memo, being able to install that into someone's business. And it wasn't like it was automation, it wasn't like it was AI. It was just being able to just be much more clear of how meetings are handled and how things, cutting out thinking inside of meetings and having those meetings cut down to 15 minutes to start concentrating more on decision making. And so if I actually host a meeting, I'm going to send out this memo out to everybody who's a part of it so they read and understanding what the nature of that meeting is so they can be more prepared. And I think incorporating that in his particular business gave him the confidence that he can look at his business different. And I think that was the win. The 3 hours, depends upon who you speaking to is subjective, but it was his point of view
Yeah.
that, you know what I'm saying?
What business is he in?
Yeah, just in a consultant, just really handling high level conversations with executives. That's kind of what his role is.
Okay. So let me walk you through something because this is where, and this is where I guess kind of where we complement each other. So you think it's something small, but I think in numbers more often than not. And you said something that jumped out at me. You talked about compounding. So if we give him 3 hours a week back, average person takes 2 weeks vacation a year. So we'll give four. We'll give them 4 weeks. So 52 weeks in a year, 4 weeks off. That's 48 weeks. So 48 times three is 96, is 144. So if we go 144 hours we gave him back in a year. And you said he's a high level consultant. So let me do a quick Google. So a medium level consultant is 250 to $500 an hour. But he's a high level consultant, so that's 500 to 1,000. So we'll use the 500, which is the baseline of the high level, and the top of the, because it's separated in beginner, experience, and then basically a master of the craft. So if he's experienced, he's 250 to 500. So we'll take that 500 times 144
Hmm.
times 500. That's $72,000. So you said something small, but tell me what, and that's just one person. If we're talking about a Booz Allen, that's just dispersing consultants or anybody that has a consulting firm, that's $72,000 per person back to the bottom line. So to me, that's nothing small. But I understand why you said it because 3 hours doesn't look like a lot. But then we take that $72,000 that went directly to the bottom line. So two things happen in regards to what we do. So that $72,000 goes back to the bottom line, not charge backable, non-refundable. Now you have that 144 hours. So you take that 144 hours, and this is where compounding triggers. So you take that 144 hours and inject it back into the business, and now you're producing revenue on top of the 72,000 that you just saved. So everybody knows their number. Everybody should know their numbers. So if I put in X amount of hours, it generates X amount of revenue. So, and I don't know what that is for anybody, but take that 144 and multiply it by whatever that is, and then add it to that 72,000. And that's how much per person you just put back into the business. And if you don't know those numbers, that's all the more reason that you need to work with somebody like us so that we can quantify those things and automate those things so that your KPIs automatically spit the numbers out at you so that you always have them readily available on your dashboard or sent to you via email. However you like to receive information, that information is readily available.
There you go. There you go. Can you hear me?
I don't know. Yeah, I got you. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
We just jump back into the run.
it makes sense. I think that one of the things that you pointed out is that people work to build legacy. And the reality of it is that whether it's handing it off, whether it's an exit strategy, whether it's expansion, whether it's to, pass it down through generations, whatever that particular goal is. And the reality of it is that those 3 hours that you're speaking of is also talking about those associated with profit, right? And, the thing is what are we doing with that access that we have? Some of us are investing it back into our businesses. Some of our looking for that retirement plan. Some of us is putting in other investments, but in reality of it is that, every time you compound that 3 hours each week, that money should be going somewhere. And
Oh, absolutely.
you mentioned about product. I'll tell you this, I had a conversation from a guy in California last night, man. Just he's in the I gotta connect you guys, but he's into real estate and, he is having and buying multiple different properties, but he's leveraging credit cards to do it. And
Absolutely.
his scenario is not unique. A lot of people in that space, because it's considered to be at risk, are finding themselves taking projects and really just dumping these things into other people's properties and but here's the thing. What happens though is that you anticipate one thing and then time passes. And from that time that passes, it doesn't work out like you expect it to. And then the narrative changes. And then, the power of money is that it's only as valuable when it's in your possession. It loses value every day that you don't have it. So money that you're waiting on is compounding the effort that you've put in to receive it. You know how unique that really is? That if you owe money today and you get it tomorrow, it's less valuable when you receive it. And somehow the plan to attach to whatever cost associated with it also it heightens where you like, well, it was only this cost. I budgeted for that, but for some reason those margins was supposed to be left over. It's not even there when you receive it. And when you think about how people look at 3 hours, it's compound in that same way. Like people look at 3 hours like some who value their money, value their time will. But oftentimes, most people who put themselves in a position for 3 hours, it's almost like they associate the income or the success, and so may not even see the same value add that the 3 hours bring. And that's the reason why I said, hey, to some it's subjective. To some, they may not see the value in it just yet. But to be able to take a lunch with a kid for one of your kids to basically cut the workday shorter than what you typically do, to be able to take an off day. That's why I strive to give founders 8 hours back. If you can get 8 hours back in a week, then now the goal is how many times can we do 8 hours for you to be able to
Yeah.
bring in that time back? I think that we have to start looking at stuff in small increments instead of looking at the giant. I think, this technology and everything's in a microwave society that you're supposed to receive success so quickly. People talk about making millions of dollars, and I don't think people realize how difficult it is to make $1 million. And because people are doing it at a high rate, or at least that's the idea of it. It's this idea that if I'm not where I'm supposed to be, then I need to just, those small wins that I'm making, it's not that big of a deal. So we negotiate the things that matter and we put those as bargaining chips to hopefully one day exchange and get what we want out of it. And I think that right there is the tale. I'm willing to sacrifice and give the price you give today, right? But with the hopes of something that you may get tomorrow. And so
Absolutely.
that's kind of why I downplay the 3 hours because some people don't see the value of the present right now.
Well, let me compound on something that you said about going to lunch and things like that. If we're talking about an attorney or a CPA or just your regular entrepreneur that's accustomed to working until 9, 10 o'clock at night, you give him 3 hours back. Now he's at home for dinner and building those foundational or those core memories that their child is going to take with them forever. And you also said something about a microwave society. Like we live in a microwave society where everybody wants it now. But those same people are afraid of AI. Like it doesn't get more microwave. Like that's all AI is. It's just condensing time frames for people, which is where we came up with this whole 3 hours or 8 hours or being able to give people's time back because we're condensing time frames, just like you just like a microwave does to how long it takes to warm up food. I use a toaster oven, and I remember when my family came to visit me 2 years ago for Thanksgiving, and they stayed at my house before the Airbnb was ready, and my little cousins weren't accustomed to it, and they all they did was they were clowning me because it took so long to warm up the pizza because of the whole microwave thing. But it just it's comical to me that people say things like that, and we understand that people have those expectations, but the things that give us that ability, those capabilities, people are shying away from, and it doesn't really make any sense. And to be afraid of AI when the word artificial really just means human made. So with there is no AI without us.
Yeah,
Like it's
I was watching a video, an old clip of Steve Jobs, and they were interviewing him about why he felt the need to invest in a company called Siri, and they thought that Siri was a search engine, and he was like, "Nah, we bought it because of the AI image of what Siri brought out." And that just goes to show you how long ago that was. I don't know how long Steve Jobs has been passed, but he purchased a company who was operating and already had AI features lined up. And, Sirius is not what it is when it first came out. Obviously, there's a lot of tools out here that kind of smoked it, but that's just gives you a glimpse that this has happened and been around for some time. We just never really associated. We just thought it was a cool little gadget that a phone company put together. But in actuality, that was an isolated company that they absorbed that was already using that thing. And I thought that's really interesting that, we don't realize how much of it has been in our faces so much. But now because the public is speaking about it on a regular basis, it now gives it a scare. What do you think these cameras are doing? Like, help me make, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like that's a really interesting perspective that companies may have when it comes to that. But if I do have a conversation with someone who is scared about AI, and I would just simply say, you must be amazing. The question is are you able to track your data? And I'm not talking about your profit and loss, how many sales you come in. That stuff is basic information you can kind of look up. I'm talking about how do you steer the ship before the end of the month? How do you steer the ship before the end of the week or the quarter? Like, how do you know if you are impactful or how can you stop? And if you have that component, you are a genius. And I think that to me is where AI, in my opinion, has played a major part for us and the clients that we serve is being able to make data field conversations, being in a position where you can make decisions on a drop of a dime and understand that now you can use that genius that made you successful. You don't have to go off your gut. You have now supporting evidence to make it a choice about how you proceed, how you hire, when you're going to implement some type of strategy. What's your new offer? Hey, if you're 15% lower than your goal, do we do we do we increase our prices? Do we liquidate digital products? Like, what do we have in place to make sure that we are hitting our specific goal? And should we partner with this company? Do they align with what we do? Like, all these different things, we have to make all these choices. So being able to shorten those things, and I heard something that was really powerful, like growth is by subtraction. Like, who figure that math out? Not multiplication, not having multiple decisions, but how do we eliminate the things that are noise and identify things that drive? Because I sometimes myself struggle with, I got to get this done just so I can check it off. But it may not even move the needle in the way that it should. And I wonder if I'm intentionally focused on having data field outcomes, and those who are just going by the flow, I wonder how they are operating in their day to day. If they're not intentionally focusing on how am I measuring the impact internal as well as external in our businesses?
Yeah, no, I'll leave with this, and just to simplify something that you said, we've all been on road trips, and like GPS is an amazing thing, but I think I remember TripTiks, and then I remember MapQuest, and now we have GPS, which is an evolution of MapQuest. But usually, when you had a TripTik, you would get on the road, you would be on this route, and you wouldn't figure out you were going in the wrong direction until you stopped the gas and realized you was 30 miles out of the way. And that's what people are still doing with their businesses. They're waiting until they get to those milestones,
Mm,
those gas station, those pit stops to figure out where they are and try to pivot from there. But when you properly integrate AI into your business and have the ability to monitor your KPIs on in real time, not on a daily basis, not in real time, you can see what's really moving the lever, what you need to put more into, more effort, energy, more resources into, and shift the results before you get to a place where you're trying to figure out what happened and have to do damage control. It just
Yeah.
prevents and enhances so much of what you do as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a CEO, as a COO, as a CTO. Like people talk about pivoting on a dime. Like this is the definition of pivoting on a dime.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more in the idea of being able to pivot, being able to make quicker decisions. But also, people talk about AI hallucinating and they talk
Mm,
about how it goes off. So, if you did have a strategy and you are working that plan, when a new idea comes up, it should challenge that plan. How does that
yeah,
line up to the objective that we have? Does that take away? And if you don't have those guardrails in place, this is why such a good idea can be alluring and it could be a real distraction that move the needle. And hence the reason why we decided as an organization to kind of become more lean as we possibly can on our focus. Do we have the capacity to do more to help people? Absolutely. But we recognize that we can probably do something really, really well by actually focusing on things that's going to actually make real impact within 14, 21 days of businesses. And so they can see massive, massive improvement. And so they can see an ROI and a return. So you can attach something to it. If you find yourself in a position where you know that it has a long runway, it's a much difficult aspect to change somebody's perspective when so much information is being a fire hose to the communities that we serve. So type of business that we're in, being lean, and in addition to, I think that that could be a universal across the board. I really love going to restaurants where, man, there's only 4 or 5, 6 things on a board. Like limiting the choices so a person can say, "Hey, this is
yeah,
your 4." So, is it safe to say Chick-fil-A has decided to say, "I'm only gonna work 6 days out of the week. We only have a menu board of chicken. That's all you got. Different forms of chicken, but this is what it is." And they are doing way better successfully than companies who are open 7 days a week and having a hodgepodge board of choices. So in some cases, acknowledging or identifying someone's offer to say, hey, look, sometimes doing less actually gets you there faster. And you wouldn't necessarily know that because you may have been holding on to something that you have been doing right. But the question is, are the margins right? If you can
yeah.
less with more leverage and better.
We should jump on later and dig into that because that margins conversation is something that is pretty intriguing too when you really break it down in regard again in regards to working with someone like ourselves in integrating the infrastructure that's provided and the tech that we bring to your company once we figure out where you're going, how you're going there, and establish that infrastructure and then infuse the tech. Like that conversation in itself is something that we should definitely jump on and talk about later on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure, man. Well, I appreciate your time. As always, it's a pleasure to share this conversation with the people. And if anybody has any questions about any of this or any of this resonated, you can hit up Toure at Toure D Young on Instagram, Toure D Young on LinkedIn, Wayne Runs, Wayne M. Carr on the same two platforms. And we'd be more than happy to have a conversation and figure out how we can help, even if it's just a conversation to clarify some things for you or to put you at ease that you don't need to be fearful because it's not going anywhere. It's kind of one of those things where you can you can get down or lay down. You get on now or fall behind. Just to give you some insight into like it wasn't always tech and insurance.
Nah,
But yeah, be happy to help and happy to have that conversation. But we'll be here having these conversations for you until you decide to join us.
absolutely, man. So until next time, peace.
Be well.